This is the real deal. I keep saying it's gone from significant to serious.
The maximum sustained winds for this storm up to 65 miles per hour, gusting to 75, so that's gusting to hurricane force.
1 to 3 foot of storm rise, inundation, but the winds will increase.
Hurricanes, a force not to be reckoned with. In the wake of the storm, what do you do and where do you go?
Living in the beautiful coastal bend of Texas, Mother Nature's wrath could change your life in an instant.
It's critical to make a plan and be prepared to survive whatever threat may come at us this hurricane season. Are you ready?
From KRIS 6 News, this is Plan, Prepare, Survive, a KRIS 6 News Hurricane Special, sponsored by Flint Hills Resources and Window World.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for this special report, Plan, Prepare, and Survive. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dale Nelson.
And I'm meteorologist Bill Alexander.
And I'm meteorologist Stephanie Lauber. Our team of weather experts will be here to help you navigate the ways to make a plan and prepare your family.
And survive nature's most violent storms.
The 2022 hurricane season brought 14 named storms, 8 of those hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes, which are Category 3 or higher. The storm of the season was no doubt Category 4 Hurricane Ian, which made landfall on the west coast of Florida near Fort Myers. Our sister station in Fort Myers hunkered down and rode out the storm with their community. Here is their amazing story.
I'm Trent Eric. I'm the morning meteorologist here at WFTX Fox 4 in Fort Myers. Been here for about 4 years and been covering hurricanes and tropical weather in South Florida for about 20.
Just stay inside and do whatever you can to protect yourself and your family.
I think what stuck out the most for me for Hurricane Ian was the storm surge and just how vulnerable certain areas in Southwest Florida are. Matter of fact, it was our worst storm here since Hurricane Irma back in 2017. When we were covering Hurricane Ian, I think the biggest thing for me was wondering what was going on outside with our viewers, with my friends, my family members here in town. Obviously, we could see the storm on the radar. Reports were slow to get in. Power outages were widespread. And just that wondering what it was like, how bad the damage was, if people were okay. Once the sun came up and we started getting some reports trickling in, then it really became apparent how much damage had been done to our community. Ian was much worse when it came to storm surge because of the angle it came in upon the coastline. A completely different storm with Irma. So I think a lot of folks were saying, oh, I was fine during Irma. I survived. I was fine. The house did okay. I didn't need to evacuate. But in this case with Ian, we needed to move away from our evacuation zones A and B. We had to get away from the coastline. Fortunately, people were trying to compare storms, and if there's one thing I've learned over the years is that it is a completely different storm. Every storm is different. Every storm has a different threat. We have got some of the strongest parts of Hurricane Ian beginning to move on shore. You got to prepare every season as if you're going to get hit. That's one message that I put out every year. It doesn't matter how many storms are forecast, whether it's 20, 15, or 5. It takes one storm to hit your house to make it a busy year. I think the biggest lesson learned here from Hurricane Ian was just how dangerous the water is, and for folks living along rivers and some floodplains, just how important it is to know your evacuation zone and have a plan to get out. So if it was my number one takeaway, it goes back to the old saying that you got to hide from the wind and run from the water. I hope everybody in Texas, like in Florida, takes hurricane season serious. You look at the last couple of years, it was Louisiana. They got hit back to back. Last year it was our turn. Hope we're quiet this year, but if it's your turn this year, especially in the southern half of the state, prepare, prepare, prepare.
Yeah, you really don't realize how bad a storm can be till one like Ian comes along and hits a coastal area of the United States.
That's right. And imagine what would have happened if they had not had adequate warnings to keep them out of harm's way.
That's true. And one of the major problems that we saw with Ian had to do with the cone. Many folks didn't even understand that they were in danger. So let's talk about the forecast cone. 21 years after the very first forecast cone was used, our accuracy has greatly improved. But Do you know how to read the forecast cone?
A+. I took this question to folks at a home improvement store in Corpus Christi, but first, an icebreaker.
Okay, so are you ready for hurricane season?
Yes.
Storm shutters, we got hurricane windows. I mean, yeah, we're ready.
Well, we've got our generator serviced, and we've got getting some extra canned goods.
Have you ever been through a hurricane?
No, not yet.
So far, so good. Now I ask the tough question.
What does the cone tell us about the storm?
Well, it tells you where the eye is, and it tells you the probable direction of it.
That's correct. The forecast cone predicts the path of the storm's center, or the eye.
A lot of people tend to think that if you're outside of the cone, you're in the clear, you're not going to see any impacts. Is that how you previously thought of it?
No, you'll have I would think you'd have impacts also.
That's right. Dangerous conditions can happen tens or hundreds of miles outside the cone.
Always prepare for the worst, even though you don't want it to happen.
It's perfect. A+. That was it.
And that cone is important to pay attention to because it expands or contracts. It has a lot to do with the accuracy of the forecast. So keep up on the latest information on that forecast.
That's exactly right. And small changes can make big differences to that forecast. And also the time scale associated with the forecast. You want to stay up to date on all of those changing details.
And it's just as important to understand the difference between a watch and a warning. Here's a simple way to understand what you should do if an alert is issued for your area. A watch means the ingredients for a storm are present, but the details are uncertain. You should watch out because impacts could begin within the next 48 hours. Now is the time to put your preparedness plan into action. When a warning is issued, it means the storm is fully baked. Depending on the type of warning, those conditions are expected to impact our area within 36 hours. At this point, your preparations should be completed.
The National Hurricane Center is responsible for tracking activity in the tropics, but our local National Weather Service office right here in Corpus Christi also plays a big role when a storm approaches in the Gulf of Mexico. National Weather Service Corpus Christi jumps into action, taking special weather observations and providing local knowledge of the coastal bend to hurricane specialists at the NHC.
Once a cyclone then develops, then we start communications with the National Hurricane Center, and we determine if watches and warnings are needed, and this will depend on the different situations and the threats that we might have in our area.
When a storm threatens the coastal bend, your KRIS 6 weather team also works closely with the National Weather Service Corpus Christi to keep you ahead of the storm.
Chasing the storm. Coming up, we introduce you to a man who's hunted dozens around the world, including Hurricane Harvey. What he has to say about the upcoming hurricane season next.
Coastal flooding during a hurricane can be a major problem, intensified by the storm surge. But do you know what causes that storm surge? Coming up, we'll look at what causes the surges and what dangers it poses.
Harvey was very special. Harvey was the return of the American hurricane. The whole decade before Harvey, no major hurricanes hit the U.S. It was the longest time we'd ever gone, and Harvey broke the spell. And I wrote it out right in Rockport, and man, it was something to behold. I was in a hotel and the whole place started to blow apart. The walls started to come off at the height of the storm. Harvey had a very violent core. And folks from Rockport, Fulton, Port Aransas, Aransas Pass, folks in those communities who wrote it out were in that eye wall, know what I'm talking about. It was scary. It was a violent hurricane. When it came off the Yucatan Peninsula, it was this disorganized disturbance. And I remember thinking I saw no potential in it. I was like, that thing is junk. It's garbage. It's not going to become a hurricane. And when it finally hit the Texas coast, that was a monumental Category 4 hurricane. I saw the town just kind of like, just 9 months after the hurricane, or 10 months, just kind of rising from the ashes. And I saw the resilience of the local people, and it's just great to hear that things are, on track. Don't think that Corpus Christi is immune. It's not. It's been a while, but it will come back at some point, and you got to be ready.
The storm surge is the greatest danger in a hurricane it poses to coastal residents. The storm surge is a rise in water above normal sea level, and it happens generally in the right front quadrant of the hurricane when the water is pushed up towards the shore by the counterclockwise winds, causing the water to rise. The more it rises, the more damage it causes and the more danger for people that did not evacuate. A cubic yard of water weighs over 1,700 pounds, and the damage it causes from the storm surge is catastrophic for coastal residents.
Hurricanes or any tropical system can have major impacts. Tornadoes, high winds, rip currents, and large waves can all be a threat. The risks are not just confined to the coast, but their impacts can be felt well inland too. So it's important to know your individual risk. The force of strong winds alone can cause tremendous devastation, toppling trees and power lines or damaging or destroying buildings. Storm surge can travel several miles inland, especially along bays, rivers, and estuaries. Check the Coastal Bend storm surge map to see if your area could be inundated by the storm surge. Torrential rains associated with tropical systems often cause flooding, which can reach hundreds of miles inland, and this flooding can persist for several days, even after a storm has dissipated. Tornadoes can accompany landfalling tropical cyclones and typically occur in rain bands well away from the center of the storm. Know what to do if your area is put under a tornado warning. To find out if you're in a flood zone, evacuation zone, or in a storm surge prone area, head to KRISTV.com/hurricane.
Planning out your evacuation route is a vital part of your hurricane planning process. If you make the decision to leave when one of these storms threatens the coastal bend, these are the signs that you want to watch out for to help guide you out of harm's way. The city of Corpus Christi is divided into 5 evacuation zones. The zone you live in determines which route you'll take. Let's take a closer look. If you live along the immediate coastline, including Padre Island, do not take State Highway 35 as it parallels the coastline. You'll want to get to Interstate 37 North and drive away from the coastline. Those who live in Flower Bluff, downtown Corpus Christi, North Beach, and parts of the south side along Oso Creek should take SPID over to Interstate 37 North and out of the danger zone. Non-coastal areas of Flower Bluff, parts of the east side of the city, and those who live north of Interstate 37 need to take I-37 north out of town. Those who live on the south side will take South Staples, which becomes FM 2444, to Highway 286 South, and from there you take FM 70 West to Bishop. You can also take Weber, which become FM 43, out to Driscoll. Those who live on the west and northwest side of Corpus Christi can take Agnes, which becomes Highway 44 to Robstown, or Crosstown to FM 43. All of these routes take you to inland areas. That's because you want to drive away from the coast. And if you make that important decision to evacuate, plan to leave early and prepare for a longer than expected drive time. Once you've evacuated, wait for the all clear from emergency management officials before attempting to return home. You can head to KRISTV.com/hurricane for all the details you need to know about evacuation routes.
Time to prepare that hurricane kit, but first, check out some of these ideas. Let's start with food. It's easy to reach for junk food, but remember to include food that will actually fill you up. Protein bars and meal replacement shakes are good items to have on hand. Canned goods are a no-brainer. Just remember your can opener. If it can't sit in a box for 6 months, it doesn't belong in your hurricane kit. Now, when stocking up on water, aim for 1 gallon per person per day. But you can make do at home. If you're like me, you have plenty of tumblers, shaker cups, and water coolers. Just fill those up with water and save money. And don't forget the essentials, a first aid kit, hygiene products, and specialty items for babies and the elderly. Plus, rechargeable battery packs for those electronic devices.
And remember, we're not just your weather experts, we're your neighbors.
And we'll be here to guide you through anything Mother Nature throws our way this hurricane season. Thank you so much for joining us for this special report. Plan,
prepare,
and survive. And thank you for choosing KRIS 6.